We're not. Okay, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us today. We're moving right along and working to meet the deliverables of our work. And we don't have any minutes to approve, but we do have Dr. Tina Jackson with us today, and she'd like to share some comments with us. Dr. Jackson.
Hey, Dr. Jackson, thanks so much, Zena, for all the work that you're doing. I appreciate you and all of the work that it takes to be at the chair level. So thank you so much for serving. I'm going to be with you all for a few minutes, and then we are going to. I know you guys are going to move into actually working on a few things. So I just wanted to first of all thank all of you all for being involved and engaged as you have over the past couple of months. As this work draws to an end, I just want to commend you for creating the state's first statewide post-secondary CTE pathway that will be available to adopt for two-year college institutions to the public school districts. And this is a big thing for us. We're excited about this cybersecurity pathway and the final decisions that are going to happen because of the work that you guys have done. So as you all are aware of, this has been quite a venture, an adventure, and we're going to really be moving forward to form two task groups that will make recommendations to the general work group about the pathway and the final policy recommendations that will accompany some curriculum suggestions. And so we're excited about this work. And I wanted to just take an opportunity to also thank the staff, the coordinating board staff who've been engaged in the work, and then also TEA, the staff who have been engaged in this work, because it has been time consuming in the midst of everything else that we're doing. We're doing this in such a great way. And I'm excited about how this will help the state's most critical economic needs, both for the qualified worker and for the security of private and public sector networks. And so with that, I am looking forward, of course, to reading the final work and to hearing more about the great work that you guys are engaged in statewide, not only with cybersecurity, but also in your respective areas. And I am going to turn the floor back over to Mindy. Mindy, thank you again. And I see Dwayne. Dwayne, thank you. And I don't see your co-chair, Zena. And TEA colleagues, thank you also. This has been a lot of work, right? And it's been very time consuming, but we appreciate it. And it's the first of its kind. And Joe, thank you so much for co-chairing. We really appreciate you. And as I move, forward, it's just great to be able to say that we actually did what we started out to accomplish. And so you all should be very proud of that. And definitely we appreciate you here at the coordinating board. Mindy, I'm going to turn it over to you.
And thank you, Dr. Jackson. And I, in turn, will turn it over to our chair, Dr. Zena Jackson, as we proceed through today's agenda. Dr. Jackson, you're muted.
Let me unmute. Thank you, Wendy. It really is going to be a co-effort on both of our parts to lead this meeting. We've had, for some of us, multiple Senate Bill 64 meetings this week. And I just want to say, I know that it was, the time frame was really short in trying to get on your calendars. For those of you who answered the calls and requests for us to meet, I just want to say thank you. I believe that the work that's come out of not just our group as a whole, but our breaking down even further into sub work groups, if you would, to try to address from credentials flow, the pathway, and then also to begin our work on putting together a document, if you will, that will support the work that we've done so far. And so if you take a look at the agenda, just a few minutes of your time to share. I think most of you know, because I sent out an email and explained that we had created a couple of other subcommittees, if you would, to begin to look at our final report structure and final reporting document, and also the Cyber Path, and I want to say Texas Cyber Path task group that that we put together, and that was with the specific intent to look at what the true pathway will look like for those high school students going forward. And I just want to say, I've been on the secondary dual credit subcommittee. And so I've not really been able to engage with the industry subcommittee or with the credentials flow subcommittee. And so I hadn't had a chance to see all of the work that you all have been doing, other than to listen to the report outs when they came from each one of you. But it was really nice yesterday to sit in on the committee that came together from all three subcommittees, industry, secondary, and credentials flow, to look at the Texas Cyber Path that we are discussing for those high school students. And just to see the brain power that was going on in that meeting, and the not just the camaraderie, but also the I want to say the explosive ideas that led to, us coming up with something that we think would work. And I think we're going to share that a little bit later. Is that right, Mindy? We have someone who will share that. So I was really excited to see that and to be able to throw out ideas on my own, and to get feedback from colleagues across the state, who either agreed or didn't agree. It was just really good for me to see that part of the work that was going on. In terms of the other group, it's very simple. We've got to begin to put on paper what the work that we've been doing for the last, how many months since we started in February, I think was our first meeting in February.
Late February, yes.
So it's time for us to start taking your notes and your comments and any diagrams and charts and graphs and the research that we've done, and put that into a viable document that we will have ready to submit to Dr. Jackson for her review and approval for the recommendations going forward. And so that's where we are today. We've the establishment of those two groups, and really just kind of ramping it up, if you would, where those groups are meeting a little bit more and communicating even more daily, if you would, to address the final work that needs to be done and the priorities that we need to complete going forward. So, Mindy, was there anything else that I needed to share about that?
Uh, I don't think so, Dr. Jackson. Thank you. I want to reiterate that the formation of these task groups, one, to spur development of the final report that we'll make, two, to develop final recommendations to the work group for the pathway, were formed to expedite this final development of the pathway, which is the group's core charge. Making recommendations to you is intended to facilitate your final decisions on a recommended secondary, post-secondary pathway.
Mhm.
The final report work group is intended to essentially deliver you with pieces of a final report toward a final draft that that this work group will endorse. So these two task groups are supportive of our final product. We seek to expedite because we'll meet two more times, possibly one more time following this meeting. I hope that we can get some decisions made today, and we are drawing to a close on this with the end product being a secondary, post-secondary cybersecurity pathway. That said, we'll hear reports from the two task groups. Uh, who will talk for the CyberPath task group to give a recount of its meeting yesterday? And I've got, well, just to give an account of its meeting yesterday.
Gregory could not be with us today, but Dr. Oser was in the meeting.
Rick was in the meeting.
Rick was in the meeting. Dr. Orozco was in the meeting. Dr. Touchette was in the meeting, so
Yes.
one of you want to step up and give that report? Don't everybody be shy, please.
I think Dr. Oso, you did a lot of the work there.
Dr. Oso, are you on mute? Oh,
There you
there
go.
you go.
Okay, there we go. Um, do you just want me to run through kind of what we discussed? I mean,
Yes, and we had some decision points. I'll contribute those as they come up if you need for me to assist.
okay. Basically, we talked about the secondary pathway and the learning outcomes matching with our post-secondary learning outcomes. We looked at two different options for a pathway on the secondary side that could align with the post-secondary pathway we've created. We reviewed the programming learning outcomes with one change, removing a word effectively, that we're going to allow this group to review as well. And we hope that they can consider both of the secondary pathways. And in the end, we ended up shortening the level 1 certificate to a 15-hour, which may be an issue because someone brought up that their college does not offer financial aid unless it's 16 hours or higher. So we may have to discuss that. But the 15-hour the goal was to make it more easy for a high school to create some sort of pathway and an exit point on towards the associates, which is the main goal of this group. Did I miss anything?
No, that's pretty good. And let me just explain the level 1 certificate. You can still do the 15 hours, it just will not qualify you or make you eligible to financial aid.
And is that, so I don't know if I've heard that before. Is that just unique for your college or is that for all colleges? I thought 15 was like maybe the minimum number.
Yeah, ours is 15. So
Yeah, I just went through that exercise this year, so I don't know if it's unique to us, but that extra hour will provide more financial aid to a college student.
Is an 18-hour Cert 1 feasible? It would have to
Yes.
work for TEA.
I would propose putting the Linux class back in to if we want to increase the hours. Just because I hated to see that Linux class go. If somebody's going into security, that's a really important piece of the puzzle, even for a level 1 certificate. If we want to if our goal is to make the student marketable for employment, I would say that. Yeah, that having that class back in would solve the financial aid issue.
then we have 18.
For what it's worth, and I was not on the meeting yesterday, I agree about the Linux, the inclusion of the Linux class. I think more and more that's become a real value to the graduates.
And let me toss something out while we're on this level 1. Would it be better if we also include the virtualization and exclude the 1305?
There was a lot of discussion around CPMT. If we remove that, is it going to significantly impact the certificate?
Yes, they have to have the basic hardware and software before they can do anything.
Mhm.
That's a key class that has to be done first.
Mhm.
Removing the PC operating systems, I don't know about that. I mean, they need to know how to work PC operating systems and Linux systems in order to do virtualization, because you can do it in either. So I don't know if that's a double-edged sword or not. I mean, we can go back to the larger 24-hour certificate. We discussed it and thought it would be better to shorten it a little bit to make it easier for all high schools to find some way to create this pathway.
Anything not in the Cert 1 can go in a created Cert 2 toward the applied associate. They will all be stackable. Students would have an exit point here to a very entry-level job, but we're not throwing anything out. We're simply structuring the most foundational courses into a Cert 1.
Correct.
And our intent was to get this Cert 1 certificate to a manageable level that would allow for the high school students to be able to complete it, and thereby giving them a credential, which would help us hit that metric for recommendation number 4. So it's not taking away, it's just another opportunity to stack the certificates, and students could continue on toward a level 2, and ultimately, if they chose to a level to the associate's degree.
The idea is that they would graduate from high school with having completed the secondary cybersecurity POS. So there'll be a POS completer, and also with a Cert 1. Now, if the high school has the resources, students could also work on a Cert 2 while they're in high school. There may be, in rare cases, the opportunity to graduate with an applied associate. But at minimum, they would graduate with this Cert 1 intact and ready to progress to the Cert 2 and the AAS at their local college.
Questions?
Yeah, I'm okay with that. I was just asking a question about the IT essentials. So, Dr. Oso, you said it was a requirement. Is that a requirement in the pathway that we created, or is that a TEA thing? Or
I would say just from an IT perspective, period, that every student should learn the basics of PC hardware and software before they try to delve into anything else.
Yeah, I agree with that.
This is the alphabet of the IT world.
Yeah, I agree with that. We're good, Mindy and Dr. Jackson.
I do have one other question, because in another discussion, we had talked about an alternative class to the introduction to networks, because ITCC was vendor specific to Cisco. And I want to say it might have been when we were discussing the college pathway, we put an OR in there for ITNW.
No.
And so would it make sense to do that same OR for the level 1 certificate?
Yes, and I guess I overlooked that when I went to update last night. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I can add that right now.
Thank you. Good point.
And if you can move the 3 down, that's and center it so that it is on the same as the tech pathway. That it's just the 3 hours, and we're not. Yeah. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions that you all have regarding this particular option?
Yeah, they're on row 4. Networking is misspelled. I'm being picky.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. One of the questions that I had also came out of, as I was reviewing the emails this morning, the discussion of a lot of this being, and this came from the state security person was concerned about a lot of these were CompTIA specific certifications. And I agree with his comment, but I don't know what to replace them with.
I just wanted to give everybody that
Daniel, thank you. I couldn't remember.
I just wanted the other organizations that have certifications to have a chance to put some input in. We could just reach out to them and say, hey, we're looking at this. This is what CompTIA has suggested. Do you have any input with your certifications that might be equivalent? I realize a lot of them aren't going to have equivalencies, but at least that way we've put out the effort and we're not just saying, hey, CompTIA had the guiding and only hand in this.
Okay.
Yeah, I definitely agree. This is Danny Miller with A&M. Because yeah, there's enough new content available out there where sometimes it's very hard to do equivalence, but I think that because we're seeing some competitiveness among the training organizations, that it'll get better.
This is Rick. Let me speak to that a little bit. In our courses, we don't specifically target CompTIA A+, Network Plus, Security Plus theory. The courses that we teach that are introduction and advanced, they prepare for the CompTIA certifications. So they're not specifically targeted for CompTIA certs. But when you successfully complete those courses, you will be prepared to take a CompTIA certification. So it's more industry, not CompTIA, if that clears it up a little bit.
Right.
It's more
What
foundational, in other words.
Yeah, what I'm worried about is the perspective of if we put out a document that says this focuses on CompTIA Plus, and then there's a, say, ISACA certification that does the exact same thing. You know, we don't want to just force everybody to go look at the CompTIA one. We want to give them options, CompTIA or ISACA or ESC.
So what we do here is then if you have suggestions for replacement of this, we put recommended industry certs instead, and then list them.
Right.
Yeah, that's good.
Like the CCNA is a recommended industry cert for that introduction to networks, but also just be cognizant. I know that the colleges can have their own recommended certs, but TEA has a list of certs that they'll only accept.
Right. I was sorry, I left training because Stacy said she needed assistance in here. We have an approved list that is for accountability and reimbursement, but that doesn't mean that schools are discouraged to offer all and any certification that's going to help a student achieve employment, next level in post-secondary, so on and so forth. I can put that current list in the chat if you'd like.
And that might be great then. We can just, instead of calling it industry cert, we could say TEA associated cert or something like that.
Your TEA approved certs.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah.
Well, now, these are post-secondary courses, and in some cases, certs that aren't on the TEA list are also going to be appropriate. Industry-based certs are also going to be appropriate for these courses, correct?
That is correct. And I would just go with a recommendation of available industry certifications, not limited, not TEA, not, these are available, because there may be some other things that come up that the student or the person hiring would be interested other than just the CompTIA.
I agree completely with Edith. I was going to say exactly the same thing. I concur with that as well.
Go with available.
There's always new stuff coming out all the time. And some of it's like very highly good, really good, as long as it meets those foundational concepts. I think that's really where the employers are going to be focused on, because they're looking to the certification bodies to make sure that those foundational elements are covered.
And I was going to ask, and that brings me to, that leads into this question. I mean, how sustainable is it for us to have that level of scrutiny on every new bit of courseware that comes out? That's not sustainable for this group or any organization. So we need to have the most flexibility. And Edith, I think your terminology, the terminology you used was specific enough, yet broad enough that we don't have to, it's not going to require that level of scrutiny and oversight that we cannot sustain at the pace at which this material is developed.
Well, I would suggest that we change the title of the column to related certs, and then simply take off the pluses in the column and write hardware/software, write network, and write security. And there you're not associating any type of specific industry cert.
Also realize our list, we're in the process. We had an application process earlier in the fall, and our list is changing and will be updating, and we have a set criteria for that list. And, there's several emails going out currently through the Ray Marshall Center, seeing if, is this something somebody would get paid more? Or would you hire somebody with this certification? So our list is ever evolving. So, linking to our list now is going to be different than I would just suggest, people, they are looking for accountability or reimbursement, they just look on our website.
Okay.
Dr. So I would make networking just networking without the basics.
Agree.
I had a question for my CTE team when I was talking about some recaps from yesterday's meeting. This 15-hour, whatever we're calling it, certification, in the professionals on the call, what does this lead to? What can a student do at this, 15, 18-hour certification? Can they get employed?
Very entry level, like maybe a tier 1 help desk or analyst of some sort, but it would get them in the door, definitely.
Okay, because that's one of the things they wanted to make sure that if this is established to help fit the college and secondary criteria, that students can actually walk away with something that, it puts them in an entry-level position.
Yeah, the caveat with security is that they have to start entry level, period, or no company's gonna let them in. So, but yeah, this will get them an entry level.
It'll also help them prepare for cert exams.
Right, that was my next question.
Yeah, because so I run a SOC in essence, and we're bringing students in through there, and they have some level of training, a little bit. They're getting some on the job because they're beginning, and we're encouraging them to get further certifications as they're working in that SOC and getting experience too. I think that's really a progression type of plan that we have for all of our folks that are coming in that are very young.
And this was one of Catherine's iterations, right? The one that Crystal and I suggested. Are we going to still, I know yesterday's meeting, we wanted to develop a couple iterations for equity across schools. Is that going to be considered in this conversation as well?
Well, I was about to ask that. And I want to point out to the group that we began getting brief reports from the two task groups and have essentially combined that part of the agenda with the second part, which is a discussion of the path. Are we comfortable with sticking with the path discussion leading out from this report now and breaking from this discussion later in the meeting to get a report from the final report task group and then discussing that work? If so, I'll kind of keep time and give us about half an hour to do that.
I think we need to stick with this since we are in the, in a good conversation mode about assuring that we're covering all of what we discussed yesterday and getting feedback from the group at large.
Good. So
if we continue with that would be great.
Okay, that's great. Okay, so Jennifer asks whether we will show the two recommended pathways, the secondary side of the two secondary curricula for the secondary side of the pathway. Do we want now to look at that and look at how they connect to this? We've got some high school courses here, but these are still tentative arrangements. Zena, should we look now at how this Cert 1 will overlap with the secondary curriculum?
I want to confirm that everyone is okay with this 18-hour option. This is one that is being recommended with a focus specifically on high school students, although it may be for any student who would want to pursue this pathway.
And I'm just going to say, we do not completely agree with this one. It may be great for some schools and it's a good model for them to start out with. But since ours is already created and working at the high schools and PTEX and early college high schools, we would not be able to include the CPMT 1305. Our IT essentials are not included in there, and that's simply because our high schools in our area, they're starting them with the basic hardware, software in middle school, and the applications in middle school. So they have some knowledge, and then it comes in with the existing operating systems to go through more advanced settings of the hardware and software applications. So, you know, we're not, and remember, these are templates, these are boilerplates, whatever y'all want to call them. We're not going to go through that one directly. We will continue with ours as is.
So what would be an OR? So we have an ITCC 1314 or ITNW 1325. If you had to have an OR for that CPMT, would there be an OR, is it just too basic and fundamental for your students?
We can afford an OR because the degree is stackable. And of course, for us, it would have been ITSC 1425. But because it's a stackable degree, we can't just throw that course in there. And that will put us over the hours that we require for our degrees.
And you have to also understand that she's at a minority type of situation. Most of the Texas schools are not with her situation.
Okay, but if they're getting the basics in 8th grade, can't we give them credit for it still? I mean, can't the school and the college work on articulation for that, and it'll cover that first class?
And I don't think
we do that here.
I don't think we necessarily have to give them college credit, because then that adds to the 60 credit limit that we already have. So it's great that they're learning that and it's part of their education already. We just can't afford to add that as another course to count as a college credit for a degree or certificate purposes. We encourage that. I mean, all the students that are in these courses currently have to go through some basics of computers in regards to hardware, software, and operating systems, even prior to them getting into our program. So
if that course were not there, would you go with the 15-hour option of that certificate if it weren't there? And I'll tell you why in a minute.
We have additional courses, but that's a fine intro course. That's a fine level 1. I mean, it's fine already. It's just saying that we cannot include that.
Would you substitute another course for that, Edith? How would that work?
I'll tell you, we have a 20-hour program. In our 20-hour program, you know, we include routers in there, and we include firewalls and network security.
Edith, you may talk to, instead of the 1325, we could substitute the 1425, and that'll be 16 hours.
But Rick, that course is not in our AAS degree, so we cannot add it. It has to be stackable.
The
1425 is not in AAS?
Okay, and here's where we're coming into the discussion we've had with all POS and FOSs. This creates a curriculum for adoption. Okay. It will be posted, it will be available. In this case, it will be available for articulation between 2 years and high schools. Colleges have their own curricula that don't wholly overlap with this. How much latitude can there be for a college in varying from this curriculum? There can't be variance from what syncs up with the secondary side if the pathway is to retain and is to be kept intact. You can't break the secondary post-secondary pathway. What latitude can there be for modifying the post-secondary side of this curriculum.
So Mindy, what I was leading with that, if the CPMT is really a something that at some institutions, the high school kids are taking in their 7th and 8th grade year, I wonder if that CPMT course could be designated as a course option or pre-req option, if you would. So that's not required, maybe recommended. And so those institutions that need 16 to 18 hours could adopt that in their certificate, and those who don't just wouldn't offer it. It would be not an either or, but a pre-requirement or recommended course.
And and that's what we have as a non-college credit course. Because if we soon add the credit on there, it's not fair to let them take a college course and then when it applies to the degree, it's not included or counted. We can't count it because that would put them over the 60-hour limit. And Mindy was on track when she's saying, this is for someone starting up a program. Now you have to know that our high schools and our partners that we currently have, we've been dealing with them for over 10 years already. And we started out with the computer support specialist. We've moved up through network administrator, and now we're at cybersecurity specialist. So our experience with our faculty at the high school levels is, yeah, they have to go ahead and include all these other course materials that are part of the PC hardware and software objectives, because they still have to learn them. You can't do without. And the only thing is, it's based on their credit on the high school or middle school side. It's not based on college credit, or we're not taking it as a college credit.
What if you have high school students who miss out that in middle school, and then they come into high school and they say, I really want to do this? Would you offer this certificate to them knowing that they didn't get the foundational courses in middle school? So they would still have this as an option potentially.
Correct.
Do you ever have that?
Well, we do, and they struggle, but we have services, there's additional labs that they can work on. We have additional materials for them to practice on. We have tutoring services. We have a whole student organization that helps them in bringing up those skills. But we've been established for over so many years already. We're not starting brand new right now. So, and this happens with our career changers. You have somebody that says, you know what, I'm changing careers from nursing to IT. They don't have the knowledge of PC hardware and software. They may have some basics of learning how to use the computer, but they still need those skills, and we will point them in the direction of where they're available.
So based on that, it sounds like this would be okay in general for colleges across the state and the high schools, and in situations such as yours, where you already have your established programs and partnerships with the high schools, this would only apply to students who are latecomers, to either switching their high school pathway or having just decided they've discovered computers or cybersecurity and they really want to go down this path, in which case you could adopt this at your institution.
We can't, because it's not stackable on our degrees currently.
Okay, so can I stick in here real quick? I think we're kind of spinning our wheels now. This is a boilerplate. This is a recommendation. It sounds like if we were to hand this to Dr. Orozco right now, she would say, we've already got a modified version of this, which is what we wanted to achieve. Every school, every partnership is going to take this and modify it to whatever their situation is. The agreement is that the IT essentials, the PC hardware and software skills is taught in her program. It's just not taught for college credit. They have a set amount of college credit. This is going just to be a general guide. It's not going to fit everybody's exactly the way it is. No one's going to have to adopt this just like it is. Am I correct?
And I hope that that's what I'm trying to get clarity on, because I think it's a great program as you have it here, but it's just something that cannot fit for our current established programs. So we don't want them to say, oh, well, now you have to change your entire program to fit this. That's, we want a clear clarification that that's not going to affect us. It is great. The courses are perfect as to what's needed for the high schools, but you can't enforce this on anybody to go ahead and.
And this isn't enforced. No, this isn't enforced. This is a recommendation.
Correct.
Right.
And that clearly has to be made available as a recommendation.
I'm curious, I have to go to the TEACS committee and talk about the information and things that came to light from these meetings. And I would really, if there is some specific standards that people are finding, and maybe Edith, you have an example, where students are struggling that maybe need to be added to a high school course, so that way they fully understand the college course. That, I think that's going to be an important component too, because these courses on the secondary side are already established and it appears that we've mapped them. So what is it, am I going to bring to this committee that's going to bring light to some new and innovative things that they need to make sure and add to the secondary courses?
I think I'm going to speak to that. This is Nikki, and I taught high school, and I now I'm working for UT. I will say that the program of study for cybersecurity is not in the correct order. And if you look here, we've got the computer maintenance and the networking before they actually take an information technology security or the cybersecurity course. And right now on that program of study, they have the cybersecurity course as the level 1 course, and it really needs to be moved to the level 2. Besides that, I think the only other thing that we're missing for the cybersecurity on the TEA side is the more specific classes for the operating systems, the PC and Linux. There are no classes that offer that. And that would help kiddos when they're doing their cybersecurity. And although we have computer science, we don't have any scripting courses. They're not learning Python unless the teacher is really interested in teaching Python. And part of that is because of what the College Board, they're focused on Java. So the schools are focused on Java. But Python is also is a needed language. So those are where I would see my concerns when I taught cybersecurity and I had kids come in who didn't even know the parts of the computer. You're starting off very basic then.
And in Crystal's iteration, which is in the files, in the credentials flow, and it says TEA resources, it's not in the general. We made that suggestion to do the, so TEA resources.
Introduction to scripting languages was aligned to fundamentals of computer science, because in the TEACS it referenced the learning of languages, but of course, like Ms. Hendricks just mentioned, it does skew towards Java at the secondary level.
And most of the teachers a lot of the teachers that are teaching the fundamentals course are using code.org's the discoveries, which is JavaScript. And it's not Python.
It wasn't the spreadsheet. It's a screenshot of Crystal. Sorry, I just didn't want to interrupt anyone. If you go to TEA resources.
I can share my screen briefly, because what I did want to show, because I know this has come up in terms of comparisons across all the different programs. And I'll make it bigger. I'm so sorry. Let me drag this. I made a really quick document and went to the big campuses that were doing this. I put Tarrant, Lone Star, Collin, Alamo. Dallas College has 5 different pathways for cybersecurity, they have and actually created more specific digital forensics courses that weren't originally in the original WECM a couple years ago. And what I did as y'all were chatting was highlighted the courses for certification. And what this summation is if it is considered a course at one of the campuses. So I put an X for each course that kind of came up. So I'll leave this up here as y'all continue to discuss the level 1 proposition for the new certificate. Because intro to scripting languages is here. One campus does utilize it, Colin, but I do notice that theirs in particular was for Python as opposed to other languages, but the WECM is very vague. So this should be available on the drive in case anybody wanted to go back and also reference this in terms of comparison of courses, because I get the feeling that that's going to be really critical as we do different scenarios for cyber, because it sounds like some are actually a little bit more networking based versus Dallas College that's innovating new courses that didn't exist before, versus some campuses, I don't want to speak out of turn, it might be Tarrant, and I believe Alamo incorporate Programming Fundamentals 1, which is usually on the ACGM side. So it is very varied. I will say in my experience for the Programming Fundamentals, I have typically seen that mapped to computer science pure courses, whether that be computer science in CTE or AP. So I'll stop talking so y'all can kind of wrap your heads around this.
But Crystal's going back to the other, we had made suggestions on summer courses, like your map that you had made. So that way they got the operating systems and fundamentals of computers kind of out of the way in the summer, and then we're able to start in on the courses. And I know your little blue boxes, there's a PDF in our files.
Yeah,
show that map.
So part of some of the work that Jennifer and I were doing was starting really, really big. And so again, I work with PTech, so it kind of runs the gamut of trying to start with an AAS and do a stackable credential in reverse. So this is kind of like the largest scale of what we could potentially recommend for some campuses, starting before the 9th grade year, possibly marry, and again, I'm PTech biased, so I'm trying to push a longer pathway, but we did try to map fundamentals of computer science as best we could, because we know that it might not always directly align, but that's why we're here, to see what we can change or revise in the TEKS. We did put in fundamentals of computer science, foundations of cybersecurity, internetworking technologies 1, internetworking technologies 2, and the cybersecurity capstone. That was just to satisfy at a high level the secondary pieces that we need to get done. If you'll notice, fundamentals of computer science, computer maintenance, and digital forensics, and the extra practicum or independent study or project-based research are not included in what we're thinking at a high level. But we just threw this together as best we could. But as we were building this out to see what the largest scale we could go in terms of associate degree completion, this is what came about, because I wanted to make sure to give consideration to all of the institutions. And we realized, well, at least I realized that it might be worth at least the TEA team coming to a consensus on which secondary courses might be able to apply to courses not specific, because this suggestion was based off of the proposal that was put forward. So we wanted to try and see, and obviously get the opinion of the group. Is that needed for us to try to look at it from a TEA perspective, course by course, at a higher level, to make sure to accommodate more courses, because we know that some colleges already have established pathways. So that's kind of what we were thinking through at the time. But again, this isn't the end all be all of pathways, because we know that some schools cannot go all the way to an Associate of Applied Science, nor do they have the faculty to do so, or the time, or the contact hours. So this was just one long iteration, but we did pinpoint these particular courses as being a little more flexible in terms of their alignment for post-secondary.
So this is kind of a moderation question. I'd like to jump in, and forgive me if this is general, it's already been discussed, or if this is something that we need to put in later or whatever. But in hearing all of this, and it makes me wonder, do we have some sort of formalized competency recommendation pathway? You've got these pathways hammered out, but it's on the student to choose which one they want to go down to. Is there something like, you know, where a student comes in and says, I want to do cyber, but I have no idea where I want to go or how I want to do it? Is there some sort of general basic competency measurement that is established through one of these curriculums that can say, based on how you handle these competencies, we can recommend this pathway? Or is it still completely dependent upon the level of commitment that student wants to go through? Has that been discussed in this forum, or is that something that is even realistic to put in place anywhere? Does anybody understand is that too general?
Are you saying students come into the program of study with a certain competency, or come into the college with a certain competency?
I put it like this. I have plenty of my friends right now that have kids that are starting college. We don't have kids, but they all say, you need to do what Mr. Chris does. And what does Mr. Chris do? Well, I do cybersecurity, but what does that mean? And they come in and say, yeah, I want to do cybersecurity. I like computers, but that's the extent of it, right? Is there in these competencies, like taking your core classes in any other graduate, undergraduate, whatever program, is there something that can be a sort of recommended pathway for what your ability shown in these core courses to make that recommendation, versus still it being up to them to choose and fight their way through? They want to be a scripter, or they want to be a network engineer, or they want to be you see what I'm saying? Is that even feasible at this level?
So we started the conversation with competencies and looking at it from the bridge aspect, because those students who come in who don't know what it is they want to be, but they've heard because Mr. Chris is in cybersecurity and they should go in that direction, that's what they're going to do. But they have no knowledge. They don't even, maybe they don't own a computer or something of that nature. So that part of the competencies would come from the work that would be done through the bridge program. And that might be a summer bridge program. And we also talked about it starting earlier in middle school, as opposed to waiting till the students get to the high school. In my mind, the 18-hour certificate that we were just looking at would be for those students who know they have some sense of computers and they really do have a little bit of interest, and maybe even have enough knowledge and skills that they would want to go into cybersecurity. That's an easy fix, because we've identified that these are the 18 hours that you would need to focus on while you're in high school, so that you can at least walk away with a competency and a certificate in cybersecurity. But for those students who don't have those competencies, have no knowledge, then they would go through a bridge program. Now, what does that bridge program? We're still working on that.
That helps me understand. And again, my undergraduate degree is in business administration, but I look at it the same way. You go to business school in college, business is the degree people go into where they don't know what they want to do, but then there's so many different subcomponents in business, international business, marketing, yada, yada, yada. I see the similarity bridge to that in cybersecurity, because it's such a popular field that kids want to go to school where they can get a good job and be successful in it. If they have the slightest bit of interest in cybersecurity or computers or whatever, but don't know where to go, that's kind of the whole. I'd like to have a vehicle that makes that recommendation for them easy, relatively upfront, or easy to say, hey, sorry, bud, you just don't have the chops to learn this field, right? And go down somewhere else. And so they don't have to waste their time. That would have been, I would have found that valuable, unless that's too harsh of a reality for people to deal with.
I agree with that.
I think,
it's interesting you brought that up, because I asked my school a couple of years ago to add see if we could add an IT aspect to the TSI. It was shot down. But I agree with you what you're saying, and I wish there was some mechanism in place that we could do for both college and high school students for that.
Again, I'm not a parent, so this is completely unqualified, but I'm sorry. I think there's a little bit more, too much precious snowflake stuff for kids these days.
Well, and speaking from experience, I started out and I didn't do well on the math entrance exam and had to be in 03, 02 math, but I started my major in petroleum engineering. If somebody had taken I went through the math class very easily, but if somebody had just taken that information that I didn't pass the math exam or didn't do a good job on it, so I don't deserve to be in the particular major, and I needed to go to business or something, that would have changed my whole trajectory. So, I sucked it up and learned to do what I needed to do, right?
Chris, I asked Josh Beck what his criteria was to put people into his program for the high school that he teaches at. And he's doing a good job. And they're creating a Gen Cyber lab. And the answer is there is none. If you want to be in this program, you're welcome to come in. They don't look at math skills. They don't look at writing skills. They don't look at technology. Just said, do you want to study this? Yeah, okay, then come on in. But I agree that there should be a comprehensive survey of the student would definitely help that student.
But not in high school, not in high school, because those kids as a ninth grader, they come in and they could be squirrely. And by the time they're a junior, they figured out what they want to do and they're serious. And if they had been cut out as a ninth grader, they would have never followed that path. I mean, I have a girl as example. She was in my ninth grade class and I thought, oh my God, she's the ditziest blonde I've ever had. She's never going to go anywhere. She left my school with a full scholarship and she was president of my Women in Cybersecurity by the end of her senior year. So I think in high school, that's not a good idea.
I agree with you 100%. I think, Nikki, I'd like the compromise to be, it definitely encourage a kid who wants to go down cyber or computers or whatever, or technology or whatever. Encourage that, but have something early on to evaluate the metrics of what subfield that they would go down based on that.
Well, listen, I can tell you this, our counselors are so overwhelmed and understaffed that there's not the sources to do anything like that. There's not the resources. I mean, we're still trying to teach our counselors exactly what cybersecurity is across Texas so that they'll promote it, right? Because they don't understand it. So getting that across right now is more of a high priority than trying to work out which kids should follow that path or not.
Yeah. Closest that I'm aware of is that you mentioned, Chris, is the NICE framework. At the level of these are the competencies you need in order to do these tens, if not hundreds of cybersecurity type of jobs. So NICE has done that. How well it's done, some argue left and right. But if you're looking at jobs, and then you take that down to the 4-year university level, you take that down to the 2-year level, you take that down to the high schools. That's a place to start. But if you're looking at, I want a job in cybersecurity, go to the work roles. There's 52 or something like that. You can figure out which type of cybersecurity role you'd like to do. Then you look at the competencies, and then you look at universities that offer that, and you look at community colleges that offer that, and high schools that offer that.
I didn't want to detract us too much, but I do think that over time, it would be great if, again, Nikki and others that have counselors are completely understaffed and are skilled to do this. But that's another thing that I would like to see developed as this matures, to be able to give people the guidance on where they think they should go versus them just saying, oh, that sounds cool, let's try that. Or that sounds cool, let's try that. And actually be able to focus their abilities and evaluate that ability into a path that is feasible, or most likely for them to succeed and excel in. But
I think also in high school, they're still trying out courses. They don't always know what they want to do. And so, yeah, it sounds cool. Maybe I'll try it. And then they actually find out they like it or they're good at it. And, it's high school's the time for that because they're not having to pay for these courses. They have the time to try to figure out which pathway is going to work for them.
So if we've done our job, if we've done the work that we're supposed to, we will have introduced this to them in their middle school years before they get to the high schools. And those competencies will have been discussed and outlined so that those students who are really serious and compassionate about it, they'll be ready to go forward. They'll want to keep at it, and others will venture off. The cybersecurity person may realize I really don't like sitting at a computer all day, but I'd love to be able to take a needle and stick it in someone's arm as a nurse, and we'll make that transition the other way. So if we do what we're supposed to, we'll outline that in our final document that, and I've made a note that identifying competencies wouldn't be a bad idea. In fact, it's something that we need to look at, especially as we move forward with our final document and as it relates to the bridge program. So if I understand correctly, the 18-hour, Dr. Oster, I don't know if you can put that back up. I think the 18-hour, we agreed that this is just a template. This is just a model that we are going to add to our recommendation, and that any high school or any community college could adopt that as an option for students to be able to pursue a credential in cybersecurity, which is one of the charges that we have, is to identify a pathway for those students. And this would be one part of that pathway for the certificate, level 1 certificate, and for those students who wanted to continue on to level 2 and then an associate's degree. Understanding that this is not adoptable at all colleges because they already have a program in place that fits the model that we need for high school students. Are you all in agreement with that?
I would ask is, we went from 15 to 18. Could we provide language that says some community colleges in Texas offer 15-hour level 1 certs and others offer 20? I just don't want it to be an 18 as a minimum when many community colleges may already have 15.
Right. And you know what? I think we should do that like 15 to 20 or 15 to 18, because some of the community colleges will also offer these courses, but instead of ITNW 1325, they offer ITNW 1425. So that's going to put them at 19. So I think if we say between the hours or credits of 15 through 20.
So if we make this a 15 to 20, we've got to make sure that at the end of the day, the math works. So if we added 1325 or 1425, then that with this model would be at 19. Then we'd also have to have another or that would allow for the 20. We'd also have to have a change that would allow for the 15.
I think we're getting a little too specific here. I don't think that this is necessary. If we put it out that this is just a recommendation, this is a model that you can try to go by, do what works for you. I don't think we need to be getting this specific about things, really. I mean, in the white paper, we can say, your certs that you agree with your community college can be whatever length, but I just, we're making this too complicated.
Dr. Oster, I appreciate your comments, but I guarantee you most people are not going to read the report. They're just going to look for the end product of what they can do. And if we say 18 hours here, that's all they're going to see they can do. They're not going to go find it in the paper that we said 15 to 18 hours. And so
I think that what we can do with when we publish this on the agency website is, as we do with some POSs, we can add stipulating language that says you may do this or that. You have these alternatives.
I have a question. Is this on the high school side, and is this the order with which you all feel they need to be taken? Because like in our side of things, Foundations is a level 1 course, and more often than not, they're not taking level 2 and level 3 courses and then going back up to a level 1 course.
Yeah, in security, you can't do anything in security unless you know the foundations of the hardware, software, and the network. It's just, that's the way it is. So yeah, we would recommend that y'all move that to a second level.
And I think I had seen that somewhere where y'all high schools like to put the fundamentals of security before a lot of the networking or the operating systems, and I didn't understand why.
It's because it's in the program of study, and for them to get the completer status, the students have to go in that order. And that was and Jennifer, I may be stepping on toes here, but I know several people that were on the original TEACS committee for that fundamentals of cybersecurity, and it was never meant to be a freshman level course. That's why they called it fundamentals and not foundations.
Well, we have fundamentals of computer science.
Okay,
and
maybe it's
foundations
foundations
of
of
cybersecurity.
Yeah, so I got those mixed up, but it was always meant to be at least a sophomore level course.
The
From the
foundations.
TEACS committee. Yes, the foundations of cybersecurity. The people who made the original TEACS. It was supposed to be
Well, that still runs into the same, even if it's a sophomore course. So networking and networking lab are a level 3, and computer maintenance is a level 2. So a student in this current situation is never getting to a level 4. There's never a practicum or a capstone course that's happening, at least on the high school side, as it's been labeled currently.
right. And the CCNA introduction to networks, that would go with the internetworking technologies. So you could, instead of doing, you could leave networking at the 3rd level because that's a harder course. But for the introduction to networks, that could be the internetworking technologies course.
So so
part of, to answer your question, this is really just a list of courses. It really doesn't imply a sequence. And like in the community college, they'll take all of these courses in the same semester, not one after another. Okay. So if it feels better to put them in some kind of sequential order. And another thing about the numbers, don't worry about if the number, if you take ITSC 1316 before 1305, the numbers aren't really sequential either. So, they're not constrained to that sequence. So okay. If you have a, I guess, particular sequence that, if they want to put these courses in, that's certainly an option.
Right. My goal is just to get high school students to completer status because of Perkins legislation. And so on the left, the college courses, none of these are prerequisites of each other, correct?
Correct. And honestly, what Dwayne said is correct, but I would still go to your committee and recommend that they reverse the order just for the sake of the curriculum and content. The students can't do security until they know the other things first.
Okay, so can somebody
I
want
to re-emphasize that just because at the practitioner level, when a higher ed partner and a post-secondary partner are in the same room and we're looking at 2 different kind of languages, I think, again, that's why this isn't kind of a captured practice. They give suggestions for the flow, even if it is within the same semester, because they, again, as secondary partners, we don't want to do an incorrect flow if a student is in an incorrect place. So it might be a good consideration for us to think about in the work group of it needs to be this way, but we also need to take into consideration how the high school would need to view it. And if they look at it this way, that's what is kind of causing a little bit of the confusion. But practitioners in the field should be able to understand, at least at the local level.
And just my 2 cents, going back to a high school mindset, if I took foundations of cybersecurity first, that would let me know if I want to be something else in computers or I want to be in cybersecurity, and then building upon my computer knowledge next. So like if you took foundations, and it still could be a level 2, and you could take foundations of cyber and then like computer maintenance, which is in a level 2. I feel like, and correct me if anybody feels differently, but if I just take computer maintenance, I'm not sure that's going to let me know if I'm interested in cyber.
No, and I agree. I'm going to speak to this because I taught the foundations of cybersecurity with kids not having any other background except for a computer science course. And I know, and I had AP kiddos and I had regular kiddos, and I know how hard it was for them to understand some of those foundations of cybersecurity TEACS because they didn't have the background knowledge of the networking. In all honesty, the computer maintenance could be an optional course or taught along the same time as the introduction to networks, but that's the most important course, is the understanding the networks before they take that foundations course. It was a struggle. In fact, I had to deviate from the TEACS to teach networking so that the kids could understand some of what the foundations of cybersecurity TEKS we're trying to talk about.
So is there some cybersecurity TEKS that we should put in computer maintenance?
Well, honestly, your computer maintenance course is leading to your CompTIA A+ certification. And I mean, when I went and got my bachelor's degree, that was one of the first courses I had to take. And so, it's just as important. You probably could put some TEKS in there, but maybe if you, in the software area, you're learning more about the PC operating systems in the Linux operating systems. If you focus a little bit more on that and in the computer maintenance, and that would give them some background there towards cybersecurity, because they have to know those Linux commands. They have to know some of that PC operating system commands. Those would be ones that I would maybe move down into that computer maintenance, but it's not really maintenance, then you're expanding it a little bit more.
Well, we can change. I mean, I think a committee can suggest to change a course name. Now it does touch a lot of paperwork. It's going to touch the CO22 table. It's going to touch the TAC. And so we just let people make them aware that, hey, it's it's a lot of back end paperwork to change course names. And of course, a school can call a class anything, and then it just be coded, the course.
Right. I think on the high school side, the biggest issue is making sure that those kids have that network, the internetworking technologies. That's a perfect introduction course to cybersecurity. When that got added as the innovative TEKS last year, I was thrilled, because it's a really good basic background before kids take the cybersecurity course.
I'm about to make a comment that I think some people may not be happy I'm saying, but in the committee's work credentials at our first meeting, I was quite adamant about starting with the high schools. Because of the last 1 hour discussion we have had, you need to start with the high schools. And I think we're finding that out in this last hour plus, that starting with the high schools may have gotten us a lot quicker to the end product. But I apologize to anybody who feels I'm wrong, but we have to deal. That's a given. The given is at TEA and high schools. What's not a given are the many multitude of community colleges across the state.
There's just as many variances in TEA, Joe, as there are in
we're not going to go down that rabbit hole. We've covered that over and over again. So thank you for those comments. We really need to move forward. Jennifer, you asked some really good questions that we want to make sure that we are addressing. And
I would like to address one of those.
Who's speaking?
This is Catherine.
Okay, Dr. Oser.
Jennifer, yeah, I agree. If you look at the exam objectives for the CompTIA A+, there is a security section. Me and my department at my school, we've always had a firm belief that you can't teach anything in IT without some level of teaching a little bit of security about it, because that's just part of it. So to add a light layer of security TEKS to the maintenance class would definitely be a good idea.
Is Angel on this call?
No, he's not here today.
Okay, I'd be curious if I could get for the TEKS committee either objectives or a test bank of the IBCs, so that way we can make sure those security pieces either get added to the TEKS or some kind of approach it that way, and then you're kind of covering two pieces. You're preparing for an IBC and you're getting security items early on in their high school career so they can make those concrete decisions. It's probably online. I just,
It is. And also with the Security Plus objectives, it really is a combination of the foundations of cybersecurity and the cybersecurity capstone course, TEKS. Okay. It's a combination of those.
I also want to remind everyone, when we looked at these courses, those original 15 hours, we were looking at them in the context of what is already offered with TEA. And so it wasn't that we just picked these 5 and we didn't consider the courses that are in the TEKS. We picked these courses because they were those who are on the committee said they would align with what's being offered through TEKS. And so let us not forget that.
I think my goal was, how do you introduce cybersecurity in the 9th grade that differs from computer science or, you know, computer maintenance? And excuse me for, you know, I'm an engineer, biomedical and welding person right now. So, you know, how do you take their 9th grade year and solidify, oh, I don't want cybersecurity, or yes, I want cybersecurity?
Jennifer, if we've done our job, or if all of us together have collaborated and we've done a good job, we've taken those kids in the 7th and 8th grade and tried to infuse cybersecurity if that's what they're interested, or they may not be. So when they get to the 9th grade, you don't have to worry about it, because in the 7th and 8th grade, we've already started the conversations through a bridge program for them to go through.
And exactly. So, you know, in Crystal's iteration of her map, she has that summer kind of computer operating systems course that was part of her map, and, you know, kind of leading to a way to add additional hours too. So yeah, I agree that, you know, maybe it is a big summer program that decides, and then if they're taking computer maintenance first, that's just a supplement, you know, an additional supplement, and then they'll get to foundations.
Thank you.
I do have a process comment. Jennifer, I kept hearing you say, once this report is done, I'm going to take this back to the TEA council work group, what have you. Is that what I heard?
Right. So part of the legislation in charge, and sorry, I'm coming into this, you know, somebody who, Laura, you know, quit her position, and I'm coming, you know, into this sort of trying to be the best asset I can. We have a TEKS committee on hold to wait for, which is comprised of industry. I think there's one person in this group that's on that committee. I'm not sure who that person is or was, but they are on hold, and they are comprised of higher ed, teachers, and industry. And I will be facilitating the TEKS revision. And so we will be taking a look at all of the courses in the program of study, and it was put on hold in order to wait for this group to have recommendations that I can bring to that committee to make courses more robust, to add a course, to pull a course from another program of study. And my recommendation was, if there's some sort of competency that's not currently in the program of study, let's not reinvent the wheel or steal a course from another program of study. Let's just add to the TEKS and make sure that the competencies get in there. I think that's going to be your quickest and your easiest route. And then Crystal was brought into the fold in order to show how she maps like PTEX, because they were concerned that you know, a degree wasn't going to happen within the current set of options because of seat time and, you know, different things. So, but that's kind of another story. But yes, that's my goal.
Thank you.
And Joe, let me just give some more background. So our elected state board of education appoints people to these committees that Jennifer is talking about. Once the committees make their recommendation, it goes back to the state board of education, and then in an open meeting that is recorded that anyone can listen to and watch and testify, they go through every single one and make the determination if they agree or disagree. They can either then accept the committee work, they can edit the committee work, or they can send it back to the committee to redo. So while we can make these recommendations, our elected, and I want to be key about that, they are elected officials, have the final say on what goes into these courses.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Stacey and Jim.
All right, Jennifer, this is for you. I'm just throwing this out there. Everybody else in college, just close your ears. This is for middle school. Some states have a course for cyber patriots for middle school. And so the kids are getting exposed to cybersecurity by doing cyber patriot competitions, but also being able to take it as a course. Just an option.
Fantastic.
Is that, that's a private company though, right?
It's the Air
Cyber
Force
Pathway.
Association. It's nonprofit.
Okay. And I think Joe had talked about that before, like you had work on that, right?
Indeed, indeed. Yeah, actually, that's going to be part of the report that we'll be speaking about here in a little bit.
I have a naive question. How do we get from, do we agree that this 18-hour Cert 1 works as a boilerplate? B, how does the work of connecting this to the cybersecurity POS, the secondary POS, how does the work of that need to proceed? Are we doing this through recommendations to the TEACS committee, Jennifer? Just wanting to make sure I understand.
What I'm going to end up doing, because these courses are already in the program of study, so that we're currently looking at on the screen. Just like if I just had this, it would tell me I don't need to bring anything to the TEACS committee. What I thought about doing is if I can find detailed information about the college courses, then I can say, hey, let's look at the TEACS. They're recommending these courses, but let's look at the TEACS and make sure that they're mapping to every single thing that goes on in these college courses. As of right now, just from my notes, I have some ideas of what I'm bringing to that committee, but just looking at this says we're good. You know, like it tells me that what's there is okay. So there's nothing specific on the screen for me right now that says this is the information that the TEACS committee needs, because we already have all of these courses in the program of study. So one of the things I was asking for is what competencies are missing and what competencies do I need to bring back? So I've heard things like Linux and Python, and making sure that to look at, you know, the security aspect of the CompTIA A+ and some internetworking, maybe for the computer maintenance and foundations of cybersecurity courses.
So then it sounds
because
as
we
though-
don't have in the program study Linux or PC operating systems. They're not
Okay.
in the.
Okay, it sounds as though a breakout group should look at the TEACS for these courses and the course descriptions and learning outcomes for the comparable courses in the Cert 1 boilerplate and make sure that there's 100% overlap. Am I right about that? Folks, what would you think?
Well, Mindy, I think you're taking my question to Jennifer earlier, and what Stacy answered a step further was that was my concern about the process is we want to make sure, as you just eloquently stated, how can we best make sure that the recommendations we've been working on for so long have an impact on what Jennifer and Stacy and company are going to be taking forward. So I would agree that that needs to be done.
Okay, Zena, what do you think? Do we need to form a third task group to study this?
I don't know that we need to form a third task group. I just think one or two of us need to work directly with Jennifer and get her what she needs. First of all, Jennifer,
Okay.
I've heard you say it a couple of times you came on board. You're doing a great job. You're asking really good questions that we need to hear. And we want to get you the answers that you need so that you can promote this in the way that you need to your team and to the TEA. So you asked if you could get the information about these courses. We can get you the course descriptions. We can get you the learning outcomes. That's all a part of.
And nobody on this team would have to do more work. I can just take those learning outcomes to the committee. Somebody could highlight, you know, somebody with college and high school experience like Nikki or, other people in this group. If you've had experience in these areas, if you see something's missing, like I've heard Linux, Python, operating systems information, I can let the group, the TEACS group, do this work. I just need the resources. So I don't want to take up, more time from the group that's already met, so many times, but just give me the info and I'll pass it along.
Maybe you and I, Mindy, can meet, and then Mindy can add in anyone else from the coordinating board who can help us.
You bet.
Get that information sooner rather than later. We don't need a committee to be able to get you what you need. And
All
if
right.
we need a subject matter expert, we'll bring in Dr. Oser or Dr. Newman or Dr., someone from the college side who can give you more details.
Part B of my question is whether college SMEs here need to look at the TEAC side of it, or will it be sufficient that TEA look at the TEACs with their expert eye and look at our course outcomes, or the WECM course outcomes and course descriptions? Do you think that will get it done, or should we study it from both sides?
Let's you and I meet with Jennifer.
Great,
and
sounds
we
good.
can assess what we need to do. Let's not create another committee for something that may be really simple.
Okay, sounds good. Sounds good.
Ultimately,
If y'all need my input, you can just contact me, because when I sat down last Thursday with my counterpart at the ISD here, we went through every last one of those TEACs and compared them to the learning outcomes. So they're still in my head. Yes.
Then let's go ahead and include Catherine, so the four of us can meet and we can try to knock this out pretty quickly.
Yeah, my goal was greasing the skids to make sure that this would, whatever the report finds, that it would be easier for Jennifer and Stacy and Crystal to take forward.
Okay, I'm including Zena, Catherine, Crystal, Jennifer in this meeting. Have I got that right?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Do you want to set up this meeting, or do you want me to, or do you want to do it, Zena?
No, I'll let you do it, and
Okay.
I'll just do everything I can to make myself available.
Can I be a part of that too, please?
Yes. Okay, now that said, if we can take care of that side of it, because, adopting this Cert 1 is a major step. If we can make sure we do the essential connection with secondary, we will have accomplished a lot. And I think we can make that happen. I'm confident we can make that happen. If we can't make that happen, well, we'll either bring back a report to the full work group that says we made it happen, or we'll bring back a report to the work group that says, let's see what else we can do. With that said, are you comfortable endorsing this Cert 1?
I am.
Thank you, Dr. Oser.
I do have a question about the Cert 1, though, if y'all have a minute for that.
Of course.
So in my eyes, this level 1 cert, if we can agree on this and get everything worked out with the TA side and stuff, then we've met the entire goal of the work group and task force, right? Then do we really need to address those AASs in full, or do we just need to set that aside and focus on what we have?
An entire pathway will include an AAS. I think once we get this foundational stuff worked out, we can, more easily do a Cert 2 and more easily finish with the AAS.
Okay.
I'm going to just also offer up that, yes, the ultimate is to achieve the AAS degree. We probably would not ever get to a point where we could create a boilerplate for an AAS that would work across the state. But if we've done our due diligence, starting with this level 1 and documenting that there is a level 2 and then there's an AAS, then we're putting it more on the colleges to work with those high schools to hopefully get those students to an AAS level, but they may not achieve it while they're in high school. It may be after they graduated from high school and they go to that institution.
That's
Okay. That's fair.
Okay. Zena, do you want to call for a motion about the Cert 1?
Sure, I'd be happy to. All in, help me out here. All in favor of the proposed Cert 1?
We need a motion and a second before we have a vote.
Okay.
I'll motion to accept
Troy?
this as the level 1 certificate.
Okay.
I second that. I'll second, yeah. Will somebody?
It's also say for meeting logistics, we probably need to have the gallery view, so we can see everybody who's voting.
Okay.
So
let's see.
Dr. Oser, are you sharing? You need to stop sharing.
Oh, yeah, hang on.
While we're doing that, is it going to be mentioned that there is that 15 to 20 hour, or is it just going to stick as it is?
We can mention, we published, this can have explanatory language in it.
Thank you. Thank you.
So let me make sure I understand, and I'm trying to get to gallery view. There we go. I've got gallery view. You guys can set gallery view. Can you see it? Okay.
Yeah.
Let me say two things as we prepare to do this, as we prepare to adopt this. It would be standard for the agency in having a curriculum on its website to state where there are variations. Okay, so that can be stated right on the website, Joe. Second, this is not a mandated curriculum. This is a boilerplate. It's not required that anybody adopt it as is. There is no statutory requirement attached to this, and it is not in rule that anything has to be adopted that it is. This is a curriculum that can be put to use. A college can vary it. There's no reason why not. So yes. And so that would have to go in, and Dwayne can help us kind of frame and set this up, but that would have to go in, yes. So who made the motion?
I started out making the motion, and it was Troy. Troy made the motion, I'm sorry. And then it was seconded by several. I remember hearing Kim say.
Okay. Okay, we'll say Kim. Okay, that question answered. And Zena, any other discussion you want to entertain before there is a vote is up to you.
I think we've discussed it at length, but I'm happy to put it back out there. Are there any other discussions?
Okay.
Just one more thing. Just kidding. Just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Thank you. I needed a laugh.
I do want to just talk about one thing. Sorry.
Okay.
Sure.
Is there several college courses that could map to a capstone, to the cyber capstone? And I know we're trying to leave it at 15, 18, but I think if we put a cyber capstone there and add to those hours, I'm not sure if there's something special about 15, 18, but that might solidify a more cyber-focused position for a student versus some type of desk job computer. I know they're going to be entry level anyway, but I'm just curious if there's 2 or 3 courses that anybody thinks could map to that to our cybersecurity capstone course. So that way colleges had an option.
So just so y'all know, our capstone course is more cyber offense focused, where our foundations course is more cyber defense focused. So the kids are learning more about penetration testing and honeypots and all of that during the capstone course. So, and more, a little bit more in depth about risk management, you know, it just goes that one step further, but it really is more of the cyber offense.
Yeah, this is Rick. Jennifer, as Mindy alluded early on in the conversation about maybe a level 2 certificate, I think your capstone is more advanced, should be considered into a level 2 cert.
Okay.
And it need not be that a student complete a level 2 cert at the secondary level, but we could find a course in the level 2 cert as we create it that would work with the capstone. And that would give them a start. That work? Okay.
And I would just add to that, if we are looking at the 15 to 18, and I don't want to go into a very long discussion, but if we added a capstone, that may get us closer to the 20. I would not want to add a capstone that would prevent the students from being able to complete the certificate because they can't get the capstone completed. That's my only concern.
They can complete the Cert 1, be working on the POS, and as they take that capstone course, they can take the dual credit course in high school and check off. It'll be a start on the Cert 2, but they could check off that capstone course and complete their POS. Is that doable, everybody?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Concerns? No. Okay, all in favor, say aye by raising your hand. We can well, if you got your camera on, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing no opposition, then it passes. Thank you all so very much.
Okay.
It took us a while to get here, but we finally made it. So
We've got a
that's
Cert 1. We know it will work with the secondary POS. We know that we can make sure there's a course in the Cert 2 as we work on it that will, that TEA can link one of the courses in the two to the capstone. We couldn't have gotten here without our partners at TEA and without you good folks. Thank you so much. Okay, good start.
I do have to run. I apologize.
We're just getting started, Joe. Don't leave.
It's my staff meeting. It's my nonprofit staff meeting every Wednesday. But thank you all.
All right, you got to cut priorities.
Send
Thank
that
you.
draft document out, Joe, so take a look at that.
I did get it. Thank you. Appreciate it, Zena.
Okay,
Thank you
great.
all.
Okay, I think we've done some good work here today. Do you want to turn to the report and and make that the last part of the meeting, Zena?
Just very briefly, I don't know that we really have anything to present today. I've been working on a draft of the report and putting together an outline of what that will look like and reviewing Mindy's original work group summary that she sent out to us, and just decided that that was already the beginnings of our report and began to add some language to that. Obviously, we have some additions that we need to make. I've started to create some charts and some lists. Specifically, we have to look at the faculty credentialing, teacher credentialing. We know that that is still very much an issue, and we want to be able to create an opportunity where the high school teachers will be able to teach the courses on their campuses for dual credit. But based on what we've talked about, those courses are already aligning together, so we shouldn't have that as an issue for the level 1 certificate. So the team that's working on the final report, they just got the document from me today, and I don't think that there's any reason for us to share it because it's in its very infancy stages, and we have some work to do on it. And so for sure by our next meeting, hopefully we'll have something closer to a finalized draft to share that we will spend an hour or two tearing apart. And your feedback will be, of course, very valuable in that regard. Any questions?
Yeah, I have a question. Sorry. Because I was reading an email and I didn't listen properly. In high schools, the regular high school teachers can't teach those cybersecurity courses, right? The college ones.
So the credentials, we deferred to following what the SACS rules are. And Nikki, you should have received that document, and I actually put a chart in there that is the beginnings of here are what the credentials most likely will look like for those IT courses at the college level. Now, there may be a little bit of variation, but it probably won't be too much. That's why when we bring it back to this team, I'm expecting Dr. Osar and Dr. Roscoe and Dr. Touchette to say, no, that won't work at my campus. But at least it's going to get us started where we can have some conversations. And then I started to look at what is required by TEA. So I had to do some research and pull up the credentialing that they would require for a teacher to teach those computer classes. What they don't say is what kind of a degree they need to have. So if they come in with an arts degree, but go back and get the certification to be able to teach those courses, get the number of CEUs that's required, then that credentials them to be able to teach those courses.
Okay, so here's the deal for cybersecurity. You don't need any type of credential except for a basic tech apps, I think. if that. I mean, anybody can teach cybersecurity in the high school pretty much. And
And
we don't have that many teachers teaching it because they don't know a lot about it. It's still brand new.
right. So those teachers don't have a degree at all, you're saying?
Not in cybersecurity or computer science, a lot of them. Some of
Right.
them may be
That's what-
coming with an English degree or.
That's what I said, that it's expected that those teachers may have degrees outside of computer science or cybersecurity, but then TEA also has credentialing requirements for them to be able to teach the computer courses. And so I included that on the chart. So they have to
Right.
go and get some kind of a certification in the computer area.
Only for the computer science courses, not for cybersecurity. I mean, they do, it's a very basic one. Yeah,
have
go
it
ahead,
up.
Jennifer, because you can
Okay.
explain it better.
So I have the teacher assignment chart up, and the foundations of cybersecurity are listed as follows. Computer science grades 8 through 12. A junior high school or high school secondary and computer information systems. Yes, technology applications, either early childhood or grades 8 through 12. Technology education or trade and industrial, which I am. So trade and industrial, requires that you've worked out in the field prior, and it's you have to have so many work. You have to have a work approval for that. So trade and industrial 6 through 12 and 8 through 12, or a vocational trades and industry. So it is a little bit more than just saying technology applications. This is listed for both foundations of cybersecurity and cybersecurity capstone.
Right, but a person with tech apps could teach both those courses and not have any computer science certification at all.
Correct, and that can be something too, if this committee feels strongly, there are some strong opinions about tech apps. But if the committee feels strongly one way or the other about tech apps, I can bring that sort of information to the TEACS committee as well. I can also add additional certifications to the TEACS committee work.
So my concern was, this is my main concern, was that to teach cybersecurity, you don't have to have a computer science certification of any sort. You just have to have tech apps, which is not computer science. And if we're trying to reach a lot of schools for dual credit, I was wondering who was going to teach these courses, especially for those teachers maybe in rural schools who don't have access to teachers that are computer science certified. I'm just trying to understand how we would be able to bring in all schools to be able to do this dual credit.
Would we not be teaching, let me ask a question, would we not be teaching these dual credit courses and giving credit for the courses in the POS?
But who's going to teach them is what I'm asking. Is it a teacher, a high school teacher allowed to teach it with only a tech apps certification?
Well,
are they allowed to teach dual credit courses?
No.
And if a rural school's not near a community college, to bring down a community college instructor, how are we going to help those schools?
And we can certainly address these issues in the report, but our goal here isn't to solve all of these problems. Our goal is to present a pathway that, if you have the teachers who can teach it, can offer. So we don't need to.
And also, I just want to clarify, because we have not specified in the level 1 certificate that these are just cybersecurity courses. These are IT courses. And so when I did my research, are you all able to see my screen?
Yes.
So when I did my research, obviously I'm basing this on TCC. So this right here, this ITSC could definitely change, this description that I have here. In fact, we have 3 years of work experience. I removed that because the coordinating board doesn't say that, nor the SACS. And even at the top of the document, I've noticed what the credentialing requirement says for SACS. But when I did my research, I noticed that for IT courses or computer courses, that a teacher would need to have a bachelor's degree in a state-approved educator, I guess it says a state-approved preparation program. And then it goes on to talk about the pedagogy and the professional responsibilities and and these are the areas, I guess, that they would teach in from early college through 12 or computer science 8 through 12. It talks about a 5-year license renewal, and then it talks about the CEU. And so this is where we would come back and look at what exactly we would need to do to say, if there were a credentialing issue, we want to make sure that we are specific and how we would relate one to the other. So we're not there yet. This is just very much in its infancy. But if we are saying that those courses that are being taught at the high school will match 1-to-1 for our level 1 certificate, basically, if I understand correctly, we're saying, yeah, we've already recognized that the high schools have prepared the students and the faculty who are teaching possess the credentials. Now, is it exactly how we think it ought to be right now? Probably not. We've got to do some work on this. So before Dr. Touchette and Dr. Orozco go, no, we can't do that. I fully recognize that this is what SAC says we have to have. How do we get where we need to be with the teachers at the high school?
Your problem is going to come in where each college has their own specific requirements. And I talked to our deputy chancellor about it, and she said she doesn't know of a college that does not require some sort of work experience because of the better perspective on the industry. So that's where the challenge is going to be.
I understand, and that's why we said at the very onset that SACS doesn't say that they have to have 3 years of work experience, nor does a coordinating board. That was years ago. But we have kept it in our requirements because we want our faculty coming in to teach to have had some work experience. So we've just never changed it. We just haven't.
And I'm not going to move away from the 3 years work experience.
I know you're not. You made that perfectly clear.
It's an applied science. They have to learn how to apply it and teach how to apply it.
And as I've said many times, that Tarrant County College still has the 3 years of work experience.
And we have the problem solved where dual credit faculty from a college can teach, the course, and the students get credit for the high school course having taken the equivalent post-secondary course in the Cert 1. If that can be done, then that's solved. Now, getting faculty in classrooms can be mediated via technology. I taught, interactive classes live, to remote locations. This can't all be effected. We can't effect all of this. What we can do is, as Dwayne says, create the model, and then it's a model that is worked toward.
But what we can do, Mindy, what we can do is be open to hearing what TEA requires for those teachers who may or may not have the work experience. I mean, they've already got the work experience down. They've got 3 years full time, and now they've gone into the schools to teach. But maybe they were an art professor and changed their major after they got into digital art, and that ventured into cybersecurity somehow, some way. Well, let's look at that faculty, that teacher's credentials to see if we can incorporate and match up the credentials that they have to what we would look for that person coming on our campus to teach. I'll use culinary as an example because it is difficult for even us to hire enough IT faculty members to teach on our campus. I'll use culinary. We have teachers who are great chefs at the high school, but they didn't go to college to get a culinary degree. They got a degree in business, and their side job was culinary, and they really loved it, so they switched over. Got the high school certifications. So we've got a faculty member who wants to teach because he's at the high school. He agreed to come back and get 9 hours of our courses, and we're going to credential him. He's worked out in the field. He has a degree. He has a master's degree. He just didn't have what we thought were enough of the culinary courses, the basics, to be able to credential him to go back into the high school and teach the course. And SAC says we can do that. Absolutely,
Well,
we can do that.
what it comes back down to then is that we create the model. It's up to the local college to implement it, and local colleges are going to do things differently.
That's right. And so
Yeah.
that's all I'm saying. We're starting here recognizing that some of these courses we can't wiggle with. We can't wiggle with BCIS and COSC courses because those are transfer courses. Those are academic courses. But those IT courses that are technical courses, we definitely can wiggle if we want to.
Well, I'll
But I know
contact-
Ida, she's not going to wiggle. She's already told me. It's my job to try to help her do a little bit of shimmying even if she doesn't wiggle.
Okay, I'll contact you 5 for your available times, and we can meet and come back with with advice to the committee for their consideration.
And we're asking you all to keep an open mind, just like we did with the certificate. It took us a while to get there, but we got there, and I think we can get there with the faculty credentials too. I do believe that.
Zena, where will we be next time? What do you believe should be our next focuses so that we can guide these task groups?
So we're going to do a little bit of work via email. So the team that received the draft report, again, we have some work to do. Send me your questions, your edits, your additions. I can start populating those in. At our next meeting, we should have something viewable to share more in depth on the report. And certainly at the forefront of that will be the work we'll do with Jennifer and her team to address her one little concern, and then also looking at the faculty teacher credentials.
Okay.
So
okay.
If you're not on our team, we welcome your feedback. Send us an email on how you might see that we can make it work. And then we'll just come back for our next meeting, which will be, what is our next meeting?
28th.
28th.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we had said our goal was to finish up by the end of July, but we also recognize we might go a little bit into August, certainly with a goal to be finished before everybody has to get busy with fall return.
We hope everybody will keep open the option of one more meeting after the meeting on the 28th.
Absolutely. Okay, send me your questions. Thank you all so much. You all have a great rest of your week and a great weekend.
Have a great week. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ida.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.